safely from the Earth.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
Feet, down at 2, feels good, 20 feet, going down at 2, 10 feet, 10 feet, contact, push, Houston, you can tell America that Challenger is at...
Commander Gene Cernan and Lunar Module pilot Jack Schmidt guided Challenger to a pinpoint landing on a retrograde orbit. Now less than 2 hours, Johnson Space Center in Houston, and mission control for Orion is growing larger in the field of view. Orion conducted the final major maneuver of its mission, a return trajectory correction burn of its thrust circuitous orbit past the moon and back. Over the next couple of hours. Next up for Orion will be the crew module's separation from the European service module. That pilot a maneuver called the raise maneuver. Dynamics folks here in Mission Control indicates such a precise trajectory for the spacecraft, it was determined that the raise maneuver was not required. That could still change following crew module, service module separation. Round Orion, half as hot as the outer surface. Orion will perform what is called a skip entry, dipping into the atmosphere, then lifting out of the atmosphere and dipping back in like a flat rock skimming across a pond. This will prove during entry when the buildup of heat-generated plasma Central Time for just under 5 minutes, right around the time of peak heating on Orion, as a programmed command stored on board will trigger the deployment of 3 parachutes at the top of Orion. Deployment of 2 drogue chutes and 3 pilot parachutes, followed by the 3 large main chutes to slow down Orion, enabling it to gently splash down in the Pacific. The current splashdown time, 11:39 and 42 seconds. Meteorology group here at the Johnson Space Center has just issued. It should be a splendid day for Orion's homecoming. Daryl, good morning to you, and as they say in the
SS Portland with a fantastic view of the area of splashdown. I just spoke with the recovery team. They say we are currently 5 miles away from the splashdown currently positioned. This is looking forward for the parachutes. The forward bay cover, when it separates, will be all downwind of us. Now, Hawk helicopters that will be used for the helicopter. Now, one of the helicopters will use the Navy's infrared targeting system, which will start looking for jettison to allow them to come out. Now, NASA's plan go helicopters, if you can see just to the left of that SS cameras mounted to them. These are ultra-purpose capability of this vessel, the U.S. to launch the small boats. You see them at the water and underneath water photography of the heat shield. Orion stabilized with tow ropes. You see that bright yellow structure right dead in the middle of your screen. That is the cradle that the boats and the winch lines will pull into position and put it right down on top of that cradle. They will flood that deck with water, roughly about 6 feet, and then they'll put it in position for its ride back to you in Houston.
His coverage. Orion is wrapping any human-rated spacecraft designed to return humans to Earth. And of course, the big test that's coming up, the ultimate test of its heat shield, that a variety of people about all that. Philip Hargrove, who will use the moon board to explain it all.
Yes, welcome to the moon board here at the Apollo Saturn V Center. It's been a super exciting month since the R39B here at Kennedy Space Center, and it put on that core stage. Those solid rocket boosters provide over 8 million pounds of thrust at liftoff. Now, those boosters and the core stage got us going maneuvered, and this means that we're getting into a low Earth and we stayed in that orbit for was on its way out to the moon. So it spent about 4 days of the surface of the moon and did an outbound powered flyby. Now that powered flyby means that we're taking advantage of orbit that we were targeting is called a DRO, or a distant retrograde orbit. And what that means, it provides a safe, efficient path back home when we're ready. So this allowed us to learn how to operate in deep space, one of the core tenets of this mission. And then once we were ready, we started our trip. Flyby, this time targeting our return to the moon. And then we began our return transit. Return looks like and what our entry is at.
11,000 miles away from Earth as it continues a very, very precise trajectory for a splashdown that is scheduled-based launch system. The first outbound powered flyby of the moon was performed 5 days later. Orion on a very precise trajectory for its ultimate distant retrograde orbit that would allow Orion. Next day, Orion surpassed the record set during Apollo 13 52 years ago for the greatest distance ever traveled by a human-rated spacecraft designed to return humans to the Earth. On November 28th, Orion reached its farthest distance from the Earth, some 268,000. Second engine firing behind the moon to whipper 44 seconds from now. The initial for more than 25 days it did just that. So with that out with one of the first persons that will actually be
That's right, Rob. Called cricks, which are essentially small inflatable Navy boats. He's just about 20 or so minutes away from getting into that boat. Thank you, Wayne, for coming up here and making some time for us to tell us about the operation today.
Of course, sir.
So tell me exactly how your team goes about securing this spacecraft after it comes back from space, splashes down the water just a few miles from us.
Well, a sequence of events are going to go splash down. said earlier, for those engineering purposes. Once that's done, then we put the what's called a pony collar on it, and then basically it's a sequence of events.
4 to 5 foot currently, which is within your limit. Let's take a look now underneath the well deck. Really, literally going to be going down here and right to that bobbing spacecraft and bobbing inflatable boat with your team.
Well, this is just another day in the something from under the water. We're going to recover something that fell from the sky.
You can see on our screen, those are the tip edges of just the importance of it. One of the first people to put your hands on a spacecraft that
and just ready and
become a Navy diver, and then ultimately, now that you're on this operation, looking back at that choice.
well,